When I first started learning English, my biggest fear was making mistakes and being judged. I worried that people would laugh at me, correct me harshly, or think I wasn't smart enough. Because of this fear, I often stayed quiet, even when I wanted to speak. I knew the words in my mind, but when I tried to say them, they wouldn't come out the way I wanted. Pronunciation was a huge challenge for me. Some English sounds didn't exist in my native language, so no matter how hard I tried, I struggled to say certain words correctly. Grammar was another problem. I would mix up tenses, forget articles, or use the wrong prepositions. Fluency? That felt impossible. I would start a sentence, pause, try to remember the right word, and by the time I figured it out, the conversation had already moved on. There were many embarrassing moments. I remember mispronouncing a simple word in front of a group, and they laughed. That moment stayed with me for days. Self-doubt crept in, making me wonder if I would ever be good enough. But deep down, I knew that giving up wasn't an option. I had to keep going. The turning point, accepting my mistakes. For a long time, I saw mistakes as failures. Every time I mispronounced a word or used incorrect grammar, I felt embarrassed. I thought making mistakes meant I wasn't good at English. But one day, I realized something that changed everything. Mistakes are not a sign of failure. They are a part of learning. I started paying attention to how native speakers and fluent learners talked about their language journeys. I noticed that even they made mistakes, yet they didn't let it stop them. This made me question my fear. Why was I so afraid of something that was completely normal? That was when I made a choice. I would stop being ashamed of my mistakes and start learning from them instead. A huge source of encouragement came from a friend who spoke fluent English. When I told him about my fears, he laughed and said, "If you never make mistakes, how will you improve?" His words stuck with me. From that day on, I changed my mindset. Instead of avoiding conversations, I started speaking more, even if I made errors. Slowly, my confidence grew. I realized that the more I practiced, the better I became. Mistakes were no longer my enemy. They became my teachers. Strategies that helped me improve. Once I accepted that mistakes were part of learning, I focused on improving my English with simple yet effective strategies. The first thing I did was speak every day. I stopped worrying about perfection and just spoke, whether it was talking to myself, practicing with friends, or even recording my voice. The more I spoke, the more confident I became. Another powerful method was listening more. I started watching English movies, listening to podcasts, and paying attention to how native speakers spoke. This helped me improve my pronunciation, understand sentence structures, and even pick up natural expressions. I also learned from my mistakes by keeping a journal. Whenever I made a mistake, I wrote it down and corrected it. Over time, I noticed patterns in my errors and worked on improving them. One of the biggest changes I made was thinking in English. Instead of translating from my native language, I trained my brain to form thoughts directly in English. This made speaking much easier and more natural. Lastly, I found a speaking partner, whether it was a friend, an online community, or a language exchange partner. Practicing with someone made a huge difference. These strategies helped me turn my weaknesses into strengths, gaining confidence and fluency. After months of consistent practice, I started noticing real improvements in my English. My pronunciation became clearer, and I no longer struggled with words that once felt impossible to say. My fluency increased, and I could hold longer conversations without constantly searching for words. My vocabulary expanded, and I began using new phrases naturally, without overthinking. One of the biggest changes was how I felt during conversations. Before, I used to hesitate, afraid of making mistakes. But now, I felt comfortable speaking English. I could express myself more easily, whether I was talking to friends, ordering food at a restaurant, or even speaking in front of a group. The nervousness that once held me back was fading away. Most importantly, I overcame my fear of speaking. I realized that confidence doesn't come from speaking perfectly. It comes from speaking despite imperfections. The more I practiced, the less I worried about mistakes. I focused on communication rather than perfection, and that mindset changed everything. Looking back, I'm proud that I never gave up. Learning English was a journey, and though it wasn't always easy, every step brought me closer to fluency. Now I can confidently say, if I can do it, so can you. If there's one thing I've learned on this journey, it's this. Making mistakes is proof that you're learning. Every time you struggle with a word, every time you mix up grammar, and every time you hesitate, remember, you are improving. No one becomes fluent overnight, but with patience, practice, and persistence, you will get there. So, if you ever feel frustrated or discouraged, don't stop. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and keep learning. Your mistakes today will lead to your success tomorrow. Every fluent speaker was once a beginner, just like you. If I can do it, you can too. Now, I want to hear from you. What has been your biggest challenge in learning English? How did you overcome it? Share your experience in the comments. I'd love to read your story. And before you go, if this video motivated you, don't forget to hit the like button. Share this with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe for more inspiring English learning content. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Let's keep learning and growing together, because your English journey is just getting started.